Hey, good morning, Peg. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Lieutenant Commander Steve Roth. I'm the Chief of Media Relations for the Coast Guard. Previously a cutterman. That's been my operational career path. And then also an avid recreational boater here in Maryland and a credential merchant mariner. So happy to blend the disciplines throughout our discussion. And again, thanks for the opportunity. So a couple pieces there. I think you want to measure the effectiveness of your campaign. So each campaign ostensibly is going to identify audience goals, outreach targets, and you want to ensure that your messaging is not only reaching the audience, but the audience is, receiving and understanding your message as well, and then engaging with that message. So it's a great way to measure the effectiveness of your communications outreach to make sure that the goals you've set for your campaign are being met. And each communications campaign is a living and breathing effort. And so if you're continuously measuring through metrics, maybe you need to make a change to your messaging. Maybe you need to make a change in certain audience segments. Maybe you're not conducting enough outreach to one segment. They're not being reached. So it can really help inform the tactics of the campaign and make sure that it's effective. And then the other piece is measuring return on investment. Communications campaigns take resources, they take money, they take people, they take equipment, and so you can measure your return on investment of your campaign using metrics. So this won't be a government endorsement of any specific software or platform, but here at Coast Guard Public Affairs, we contract with Sprout Social and Muckrack. So Sprout Social is our social media metrics platform, and it's much more than metrics. It's we can set up editorial calendars there, and it's also how we do social listening, understanding sentiment, understanding reach, understanding engagement rate, and it really helps us hone our platform-specific strategy because we do have a platform-specific strategy based on the audience segmentation of each social media platform. And then on the earned media side, we use Muckrack for much the same. So that's going to be print, radio, broadcast, TV. And so we can also use metrics to understand not only just the organic coverage the Coast Guard receives, we can look at issues that are trending, maybe a forthcoming communications crisis, the narrative around certain issues, the narrative around the entire brand. And then it also allows us to look at the effectiveness of our outreach on the earned media side. So we do targeted pitches to media through Muckrack. What's great about Muckrack is if you send a pitch, it's going to show you on the back end who read that pitch, who opened it, who clicked on a link. So not only are you able to send these sort of very targeted pitches, you can see what journalists are engaging with your pitches, and then sort of cross-reference that with the coverage you earn to see how effective your pitch is. Should we be refining our pitches? So those are really the two key tools we're using to not only conduct outreach, but measure outreach, measure sentiment, measure narrative, sometimes on a multiple times a day basis. Sentiment's actually a really tough metric to understand in this space, in the safe boating space, and particularly for the Coast Guard as a brand. So Sprout Social or Muckrack are going to use an AI algorithm to determine the sentiment of a comment or an article. If it's a boating fail, if someone's injured, if someone passes away, the AI is going to code that as a negative sentiment. Same thing, so much of what the Coast Guard deals with is crises, disaster, people's worst days. It's great for us to be able to say that we saved that person or brought somebody home. The AI is still going to code that as sentiment. So when we're reporting to our leadership, we actually don't include sentiment analysis because of the cases and the issues we deal with. The AI is typically going to code that as negative. And you can go in and manually adjust the sentiment, but we're talking about thousands of articles a day. So we have sort of thrown sentiment out the window a little bit for the Coast Guard brand. I think, sentiment's really good for, say, finite product launches, finite issues. If you're looking at do people find a Type 5 life jacket comfortable? Do they like Type 5s? Do they hate Type 3s? For those really constrained use cases, I think it's helpful. None of the programs we're using, Sprout Social, Muckrack, none of that is going to measure a behavior change. In the more scientific field of public affairs, that's something that really a survey is going to give you much more accurate results on. And of course, that's a lot more work. That's a lot more resource intensive. So you can sort of understand how people maybe feel about a product, feel about a certain policy, feel about a regulation. But none of those tools are going to replace a survey when it comes to being able to measure an actual change in human behavior. So in any of these programs, whether it's Cision, Meltwater, Sprout Social, Muckrack, any of these public affairs tools, there's going to be 50 to 100 key performance indicators that are going to allow a public affairs professional to really dive into this data at an incredibly granular level. Outside of the public affairs space, the C-suite, an admiral, a flag officer, has no business understanding what each one of those means. So on the earned media side, we look at total articles over a span of time, and we'll do a search. So say we have a campaign and we want to see how many articles were published about a pitch or a campaign. We'll do total articles. We'll then look at total broadcast clips, and then we'll present the total broadcast audience. And then when it comes to return on investment, this is a bit of a vanity metric in the public affairs space, but we find that it really resonates with senior leadership, and that's add value equivalency. So that is going to calculate, based on your airtime and your audience, how much it would have cost your organization to pay for that same amount of coverage. And so that's been a great way for us to demonstrate return on investment in some of our pitches. It's basically saying to your leadership, hey, we got $3 million in free airtime. We didn't have to pay for it because people were interested in our story. And then one way we've made that even more accessible is that we characterize that in terms of how many free Super Bowl commercials that was. So a Super Bowl commercial is about $7 million. So if we pitch a big story, we have a great embed, we have a great case, the next day I can come back and say, hey, sir, that was the equivalent of 7 Super Bowl commercials last night. In Coast Guard coverage. And so we found that really resonates. So that's how we've talked about our earned media output: articles, broadcast clips, audience, and add value equivalency. But then we also want to track the output of our staff and our team. So we talk about how many media inquiries we've responded to in a week, in a month, how many press releases we have put out, how many interviews we've scheduled, how many embeds we've conducted, and how many distinct pitches for stories, interviews, embeds we've sent out as well, so that we can show the effort of our staff, and it's also a resource argument for us for staffing. If people are happy with the output, through the metrics, we can look at our staff and say, well, this is what we are able to do with this many people. There's certainly room to be more aggressive, to expand, to do more pitches. So if you want more add value equivalency, if you want more articles, this is what the team was able to output this week, this month. And if we get more people, then we can certainly have more output. And then another one we like to do, we have a graph that shows articles over time. That allows us to track throughout the month, throughout the week, what issues were big for the Coast Guard, what things caught the press's attention, what caught the public's attention, and we can go through and look at where the spikes are and drill down into those stories about what that was, and sort of understand what's resonating with the audience. And then on the social media side, we do the standard likes, comments, shares. Again, measuring the team's output in relation to the metrics. We track how many posts we do. And then we're also looking at net follower growth on the social media side, how many followers we've gained or lost in a week sometimes. Not everything's a winner. And then one metric we found really helpful is engagement rate. So that is measuring of all the people that were scrolling and saw your post, how many people engaged with that in either a like, comment, share. So the standard government engagement rate is about 2%. We hover around 7. And so I'm not sure in the private sector, what the standard engagement rate is. But that's a great way to see if you're grabbing someone's attention with your content. Do you have a compelling picture? Do you have a compelling video? Do you have a compelling caption? Is what you're posting getting people to stop scrolling and engage with your post? And so we found that a really helpful metric as we look to create that compelling content that is targeted to the audience on each of the social media platforms. The district pages will get managed by the district public affairs staff. So at headquarters, we're managing the enterprise accounts. So that's going to be Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We have deployed Muckrack and Sprout Social fleet-wide. We did quite a bit of training. And so that is another thing, is getting the entire organization, not just headquarters, comfortable with metrics, reporting, data-driven messaging decisions, data-driven campaign decisions, and then demonstrating, the work of the staff and the outcome of the staff to senior leadership and making that return on investment argument. Coast Guard Public Affairs, the PA workforce has not grown since the advent of social media. So we are asked to do a lot, or people are asked to do a lot. So by being able to demonstrate that output, that return on investment, we can hopefully grow that workforce. Sure. So we do a number of interagency collaborations. A lot of times with the Department of War. We had one last week with NASA for the launch of the Artemis II. So that is something we've seen a lot more, and actually, that's something that's very easy to do through Sprout Social, especially within the Coast Guard accounts. That district to headquarters collaboration, we can sort of set that up automatically. That's a great way to get your content to other accounts, other agencies, other stakeholders, and not only collabs, not only the tag, but then hashtag management is also very important on certain platforms. That can be the same thing as tagging another account. So that's certainly another piece of the puzzle to understand trending hashtags. But then a lot of what Sprout Social can measure is if you are going to create your own hashtag for a certain campaign, for a certain initiative, having that hashtag and that hashtag discipline throughout the campaign, getting all your stakeholders, all your partners, all your collabs, and all your accounts to use that same hashtag that's basically sort of a serial number for your campaign, makes it incredibly easy to measure in a social media metrics program if you can just dial down right into that hashtag. So if we're going to do a campaign plan with a number of stakeholders, that's spelled out in the campaign plan, that hashtag management. If you are going to post about this, you shall use this hashtag. And that is basically creating a barcode for that content, for that message, so that you can go back in the back end, in a Sprout Social, in a Hootsuite, in a Meltwater, and get the metrics as it spreads across the platforms. I know, in Sprout Social specifically, the hashtags are how you track engagement on Instagram and X. So having that discipline with your stakeholders at the start of the campaign is incredibly beneficial. I would say at this level, at Coast Guard headquarters, we're certainly our audience segments are huge. I will say we do some geographically targeted campaigns. For example, ice safety. That's a big thing for that spans cold weather safety, spans, the Great Lakes District, District Northeast, I think down into District East. So that's a great example of a campaign that's gonna cross multiple district areas. And so what we can do is, go in and these programs, whether it's, Muckrack or Sprout Social or any of the others, are going to give you a heat map to show you where this content's being engaged with. So that can be helpful. These programs are not going to give you the demographic data of male, female, age group. That's just not on the back end. Whether it's Meta, whether it's X, that's feeding into these programs, they're just not measuring that granularity of the audience. When we were going out to, find a solution for social media metrics and earned media metrics, there are a number of vendors that have features that may be appealing to a grant recipient. There are multiple cost brackets. There's multiple features. I'd say by and large, if you're looking at any of the metrics vendors, you're going to get these key KPIs. Maybe there's a bespoke requirement that you have that you would find valuable, and that's going to help you narrow down your vendors. But just like we would do as contracting with the government, take a look at your requirements. Understand the requirements. Understand what you want to be able to do with the data. Do you want to be able to pitch out of a earned media platform, or do you just want to understand how many articles or how many broadcast clips? There's so many different features on the social media side, on the earned media side, that are geared towards all different types of clients, government, industry, corporate. So I think it's really just, all of them offer free demos, trials, and there is just a huge, there's a huge market for this, and there's a huge number of features, and there are various different price points. But I don't think it's inaccessible for any grant recipient to have a monthly membership, even if it's one license, one login, to a good social media or media metrics program. The Coast Guard is very unique in that we have 11 statutory missions that are very diverse. That's a huge challenge for me in media relations because I can't just go to a defense reporter. We have breaking news reporters, we have defense reporters, we have economic reporters. And that's kind of the same thing on social media. What the Coast Guard does is an incredible set of missions. And so there's certain audience segments that may be more interested in one mission or another, or one message than another. So, the last year it's been control, secure, defend, maritime borders and approaches, facilitate commerce. And then obviously the Coast Guard, it's always search and rescue. The Commandant calls that our sacred trust to the American people. So in earned media metrics, in social media metrics, we can take a look at the products we develop around these messages, around these cases, and look at what is resonating with the audience through likes, follows, shares, engagement rate, net follower growth on a platform. What is the press interested in? What is getting us those big hits on Good Morning America, World News Tonight? And so a lot of what we've started doing is actually topic tagging. So we can get a pie chart of all the Coast Guard messages: search and rescue, facilitating commerce, law enforcement, defense operations. Whatever the Commandant's messaging and strategic intent is, we can sort of take those and create topics, and we can tag on the back end. We can tag in these programs, whether it's a media inquiry received or a pitch we send out or a post. We can create these topics to then look at, okay, well, we posted about search and rescue 40% of the time, and yet that's 80% of our audience engagement. We posted about this message 30% of the time, but that's only 10% of our total engagement. And so you can kind of look at the output versus outcome when you start, being able to tag and catalog certain aspects of your message, and then see what's resonating with your audience, and that can help you maybe, say, hey, this is a very successful message. We're going to lean into this. We're going to put more resources. We're going to add more content. We're going to do more pitches about this. This is great. Or, hey, this message that's not getting a lot of pickup, not resonating with the audience, that's extremely important to senior leadership. What are we going to do to repackage this? What are we going to do from a content perspective to, to close that gap and get this message to resonate more with the audience?